Okay, welcome.
Thank you, David. So, like many of you, you enjoy watching a nature show. You like David Attenborough, and maybe you've even been on an African safari. Well, the Brazilian Pantanal is half the distance and probably double the number of wildlife species. So, where is the Pantanal? What is it? Why go there? How do you get there? And when you get there, what in the world do you see? Birds, reptiles, and amphibians, and all sorts of mammals.
We'll try and organize the next 45 minutes to give you some sense of answers to these questions.
First of all, the Pantanal is in Brazil. Brazil's in South America, and it's a long schlep to get there. The country of Brazil is the size of the United States. And you can see from this map, it's a diverse country with a lot of land and a lot of focal points.
What we think of usually is the Amazon, which actually the Amazon and the area that it drains comprises a good part of Brazil. But the Pantanal is in southern Brazil and is very distinct and drains south towards Paraguay and Argentina.
We flew to Sao Paulo, which is in the southwestern part of the country. It's a huge city. In fact, it's the largest city in the Western Hemisphere with over 22 million people. It's a big city. It's not a particularly inviting place. We were warned not to go out with cameras or iPhones or anything of that sort. And we were very careful there.
So the Pantanal is really a savanna ecosystem. What is a savanna? According to various definitions, it's a mixed woodland and grassland characterized by having trees that are spaced far enough apart so that you really don't have the canopy effect that you see in the boreal forest or in the northern hemisphere in multiple areas. Much of it is grassland. There's an abundance of water, which is seasonal. This results in large amounts of wildlife, plants, and animals. And in fact, there's a remarkable similarity to what is seen in the Northern Hemisphere in the Everglades. And as I jokingly referred to it as, this is like the Everglades only on high dose steroids.
So here's a map of the Pantanal itself. It's large pointer. It's large and it's fairly inaccessible in many respects. We were in Sao Paulo. That was our entry point. We flew by plane to Quiabo in the northern part of the Pantanal, and then made our way down to the southern part. We stayed in three eco lodges along the way. From the air, you can see it looks very different than things that we had seen before. Vast open areas with trees interspersed with water. And this was the dry season. This is the winter. From this shot, you can see it almost looks like a blood smears, but you can see the areas where there are lakes and ponds interspersed with the trees and
And
undergrowth.
during the dry season, these largely dried up. Some of them were saltwater, some were freshwater. The land is not all a nature preserve. It's been used primarily for ranching and farming.
And here you see what is a typical looking ranch. That's a mainstay of the economy. And in the Pantanal, there are huge ranches, and the ranchers, in many cases, have made agreements with the government where they will preserve tracts of the land, but at the same time they will use parts of it for ranching. And this is what they're ranching. If you've been to India, you've seen the ghostly white cattle. These are a variation of the cattle that you see there. This is called a zebu. That's the breed.
Once we flew to Kiaba, we immediately went to lunch at a local resort.
The interesting part about the resort, it was an outdoor venue. with large tables. They served it Brazilian barbecue style, but it wasn't meat. It was primarily, almost exclusively, various preparations of fish,
Freshwater fish.
freshwater fish. And as we enjoyed our lunch, we noticed that this is also a venue for events. This was set up for a wedding, and these two little girls were enjoying the spot beforehand.
Even at this first stop, before we really had gotten into the trip, we began to pay attention to the wildlife. They had set up a feeder of about 20 feet from our tables where they were feeding the local black-tailed marmosets.
And here, eight of them enjoying the a little snooze there.
When they had cleaned up all the food that had been put out for them, they disappeared, and we were left to listen to the birds and watch the birds that were coming around us.
The culture in the Pantanal, and because there's a lot of ranching, has a cowboy culture like you would find out in the West of the United States. And aside from that, they have periodic festivals. We happened to chance on one as we were driving to our first lodge. It was set up like a medieval joust and tournament, and the various cowboy groups were parading around. They had selected a queen for the festival, and there were several, probably 5 or 6 thousand locals that were attending.
The queen is not the one in the red gown, it's the one in the yellow shirt with the hat just behind her to the right.
We traveled in the Pantanal. Once we left Cuyabo, basically we were never on a paved road for quite a while.
For a
And
whole week.
for a whole week. And we traveled in safari vehicles. You can see this one has tiered seating so everybody could see what was going on. We went by truck, we went by boat, and we went by small planes from point to point. You can see that the Pantanal has essentially a river system that goes through it. To my mind, more so than the Everglades, you can navigate the Pantanal in the wet weather. And this is the area where we would board our launch to go out and hunt for wildlife.
This was one of the nicer eco lodges. Actually, all three were very nice. And just a couple representative slides. Even as we did this, we would be watching for wildlife even as we walked to the boat.
And in fact, what they did, you can't wander along in the landscape. You'll see why soon. But they would put up these boardwalks, and you could walk out and be protected and above the muck. This is all marshy, mucky landscaping, so you don't walk through it. And this was one of those areas where you can see how it's set up, how it's swampy, intermittent, trees and a lot of grassland.
The eco lodges were visited. This was picture taken of the Chaco chachalaca, which is an almost turkey-sized bird that came during breakfast to serenade us. They were remarkably loud, noisy, yelling and screaming, flying from the statuary up into the trees overlooking where we ate.
The statistics that we read said that there were over 1,000 species of birds in the Pantanal. Go back. It's, and I think Michael, we photographed about 70 plus, but this, and then because again, this is a horse country and cattle country, the lodges had horses. And this one, there were 3 or 4 of them that kind of wandered around the encampment. And this one would have been quite happy coming in for breakfast.
There were other visitors coming around that were wild. This is a so-called crab fox. We saw them away from the lodge, but we also saw this one that came into the lodge to clean up any garbage that had been left on the ground after breakfast. We began watching birds, and we'll talk about birds primarily, as soon as we got in the car. And as we drove along, we saw the chestnut-eared aracari. This is one of several species of parrots, some of which are quite large. This is a 2.5 foot long parrot. Probably 6 to 8 inches of that is its bill, which you can see here, brilliantly colored. These are vegetarians in part. Here's one eating some fruit, but they also will eat other birds, baby birds, whatever they can catch. This bill is designed for consumption of everything. There were other large parrots as well. The toucan is even larger, almost 3 feet long. It looks like it should be top heavy, but the bill is almost hollow. This is another fruit eater, again, in the parrot family.
And then we saw the bird that we had really knew was characteristic of the Pantanal. This is the hyacinth macaw. It's the largest of the parrots. They're
In the
abs
world.
in the world. They are brilliant in color. I don't think that this
This is over 3 feet long if you count that tail, which goes down almost to the bottom of this picture. It's solid blue. The yellow that you see around the face are not feathers, but that's bare skin. It uses that large bill to eat fruit.
and you see them in groupings. You don't see them singularly. Usually in groups. These two are sitting on a fence post. And seeing them fly is just gorgeous. The wingspan is close to 6 feet.
No, it's more, it's 7 or 8 feet.
7 or 8 feet a wingspan, and we would see them in groupings, sometimes as many as five, six, seven, or eight of them. They nest they nest in trees, and
Usually if they're not near people, they'll be nesting in cavities within the trees. And in fact, parrots in general are cavity nesters.
but in the Pantanal, they do a lot to preserve them. They build these boxes for them to nest in, and then at the base of the tree, they'll put metal facing to protect them from any predators that might climb the tree and eat the eggs.
There are also several, probably 15 to 20 species of smaller parrots in the 8 to 15-inch long range. This one is one that some of you may have seen even here in the New England area, the so-called monk parakeet. They're not native to this area. They were brought in with the pet trade, released, and have set up their colonies. The monk parakeet is interesting in particular because it builds these huge apartment houses with multiple cavities. And you may have up to 50 pairs nesting like that. There was a colony, I think it's still there in the New Haven area. They've also been seen in Providence and occasionally in some areas around Boston. There were other smaller parrots. This is another example, the Nande parakeet or black-hooded parakeet. These flew around in large flocks, 25 to 50 birds. These are seed eaters. People had put out grain to feed the cattle, and
The
the
birds
birds
come
don't
too.
recognize that. They come to help themselves as well. They also eat fruit, and you can see here in this picture how the parakeet is actually holding a piece of fruit as it eats on it.
The landscape has many, many, many different kinds of fruit-bearing trees, including mango trees, fig trees, and the birds feast on them.
Another small species of parakeet or parrot, this is the so-called turquoise-fronted parrot. If you look closely at this picture, in front of the yellow forehead is the blue or turquoise color. This pair was mating. We identified several more species, which I won't show, uh, but were present everywhere. There are also a large number of hawks and different species, some of which overlap with what we find in the United States. One of my favorites when I used to visit Florida regularly, one of my target species, which I saw only very rarely, is the snail kite. This is a relatively small, 15 to 20 inches long uh, hawk. It's so named because its diet consists almost exclusively of snails, and in particular the apple snail. As we were driving along toward our first eco lodge, this one was perched in a tree right next to the road. If you look closely, you'll see this large brown object that it's holding onto. That is a apple snail, its favorite food. And you can get a good look also at the bird's bill, which is curved very sharply, allowing it to pick out the meat of the snail.
Interestingly, in Florida, the apple snails are tiny like crab apples. This is a good size snail. I mean, a big one. Look at the size of that.
Some of the hawks were much bigger. The great black hawks were present in multiple areas. We saw them nesting as well, feeding on the ground. All of the hawks enjoy picking on rodents, small reptiles, dead fish, you name it. Uh, Abundance of food. Perhaps the prettiest of the ones we saw of the 15 species that are present in the Pantanal was the Savannah hawk, which had a almost brown, a brownish orange coloration to it. We did see a Savannah hawk eating a snake on one occasion. Unfortunately for me, from a photographic perspective, it was hiding in the bushes. The southern crested caracara is also a raptor, very common. It has a range that goes all the way from southern United States, Texas and Florida, down to the tip of South America. These were abundant. They were present in the eco lodge campgrounds, if you will, and at night, multiple of them would be there, presumably looking for safe places to roost.
And we
Uh,
saw that this one found a fish and took it back and was feasting.
One of the hawks that we saw, really a falcon, that I did not expect to see, is the American kestrel. These are present right here in New England too. This is much, much smaller than the hawks I've shown so far. This is about 8 to 15 inches long. This one was perched on a fence post, looking for rodents.
Now, interesting, this is a good time to mention that many of the birds that we would see there have their counterpoints up north. And although they may be different, some of them are exactly the same species that migrate, and some have very close relatives in the Pantanal.
We saw large numbers of large water birds, such as herons and egrets and bitterns. This is the Kokoi heron. It looks like the great blue heron. It's the same size. It stands about 3 feet tall, although it only weighs a pound or so. The markings of the feathers, the plumage is very slightly different, but these were present along the banks of rivers uh, at the Eco Lodge. This one was actually right near the boat launch. Absolutely gorgeous bird. One bird that we didn't see, that you don't see in the United States, is the whistling heron, a little smaller than the Kokoi heron. The whistling heron looks somewhat like the reddish egret that you might find on the east coast of Florida. One of our favorites that we did see on multiple occasions was the rufescent tiger heron. Here are two of these. The tiger herons look very much like the tricolored heron that we see in the Everglades. They behave similarly, feeding on small creatures of varying sorts. This was on a fence post right next to our eco lodge, and as we watched it, we found another one further in, busy eating this frog.
What's interesting about the way they eat, they'll catch it, nab it with their bill, and then they have to flip it around so that the head goes in first. And this bird was just getting ready to flip the frog,
Which he did.
which he did.
They also eat fish, and as Benita said, they take things down head first. It keeps the scales from sticking as they go down the esophagus. One of the interesting things about the tiger heron is that for their first year of life, their feathers look almost completely different. This is a first year bird that was walking around nearby. And here's an immature, a first-year tiger heron flying. Great egrets are seen all the way into North America. We've seen them here at the Needham Reservoir. This one was taking flight, and they were seen along essentially every river, everywhere we saw water, you would find great egrets.
And here we come to one of my favorite birds. In Florida, you see the wood stork, one of the ugliest birds known in Florida. They're in such huge flocks that they will actually destroy a tree as they perch. And we saw that in Florida on more than one occasion. Here they are in the Pantanal, and you can see them in a tree here. But what we noticed and what we were excited about is its cousin. It's
But before we get to that, I would just point out that the wood stork stands about 3 feet tall and weighs 7 or 8 pounds.
his
Keep
cousin.
those facts in mind,
His cousin is the Jabiru stork,
which stands 5 feet or a little more tall and weighs up to 20 pounds. Uh,
a striking bird, and we saw this bird all over the place. We didn't see
This
wood storks
one
particularly.
this picture was taken looking out the window or the balcony from our third eco lodge. You get a sense of the grasslands behind it. They're characterized by the black head and the orange or
The goiter,
reddish
goiter.
color, a goiter, as Benita put it. Just huge and absolutely beautiful. When they spread their wings, they have an 8 foot wingspan. And you can see in this picture the curved bill, which they use to probe around in the muck as they look for whatever is living and would make a good meal.
That's why we don't you that's why you walk on a boardwalk, not in the muck. And then we saw them nesting on multiple occasions. They build these nests reasonably high up in the trees, and this pair had built a very nice home.
There in Florida, you'll find the glossy ibis and the white ibis. In the Pantanal, there were at least 4 different species of ibis that we saw, and these were quite striking. These are a pair of buff-necked ibis that were on the grounds of our third eco lodge. They use that curved bill to probe into the mud, uh, looking for bugs, primarily small creatures that they can eat.
And again, you can see the ibis has a very distinctive bill, very readily recognizable.
This is the Plumbeus ibis. Uh, Plumbeus is gray or lead colored, and that's why it was so named. Another strikingly beautiful bird. One more species of ibis, the bare-faced ibis. There is a white-faced ibis in North America, but these 3 species that I've shown you are limited to South America.
And this is a bird that I particularly liked. We saw it on a mud flat. It was colored gray blue and kind of on the edge. And the amazing part of it, this is the sun bittern, when it opened its wings, which it did only for a moment. I saw it, Michael did not. He didn't get the picture, but we pulled this off the web. That's what the wings look like, almost like a butterfly. Lots of turns.
I think of terns and gulls as being birds of the seashore. We were nowhere near the ocean, and yet along the banks of the river, there were occasionally sandy areas. There were large flocks of terns. This is a large-billed tern. There were also yellow-billed terns. Some of them were quite large, uh, about the size of a Caspian tern, if for those of you who are into bird watching. Here's one flying over the river, taken from a boat as we were cruising along. The other bird that we found that was of particular note along these sandy banks is the black skimmer. This is a large bird, actually probably larger than the terns. Uh, Look at it carefully. You notice that the lower mandible, the lower part of the bill, actually protrudes further than the upper part. And they have a basically unique way of feeding. They fly along skimming, as their name implies, on the surface of the water with the lower bill just beneath the surface. When it hits or they feel a small fish in the water, they can clamp down, grab it with the upper bill, and have a meal. There were also sandpiper-like birds present on these sandy areas. This is the so-called pied lapwing, though it looks much like some of our plovers and sandpipers. More recent DNA evidence says that this is from a completely different family, though it's filling the same ecological niche.
This bird looks like the kind of bird that closes the beach up in Plum Island when they nest, when they closes it for plovers. Again, one of my absolute favorites, the kingfishers. There were several varieties of kingfishers. You can notice the very distinctive head and neck. This was a beautiful, beautiful bird.
Whenever we were out on the water in the boat, you'd see kingfishers going from one side of the river to the other, perching, diving in sometimes if they saw something, perching on the other side, and then returning. I've seen the exact same behavior here at Needham Reservoir. Uh, Notice also that the male and the female are readily distinguishable based on their plumage. This is the ringed kingfisher. The Amazon kingfisher, which we also saw, is actually smaller, uh, but the bill is proportionally larger. There were several species of really large birds. When I say large, I mean turkey size. We certainly know our turkeys up here. And we saw these species which are unrelated to anything we have. This was on the grounds of our first eco lodge, the so-called bare-faced curassow. This is the male, and as in some other species, the female.
Female is different color.
Another species of these large birds up in the 10 to 20 pound range were the southern screamers, which we saw on multiple occasions, going around in various fields looking for seeds or small insects.
The landscape here, you get another look at this grassland savanna look to it, was covered with termite mounds. Everywhere we look, we would see hundreds of them literally popping up all over the place. You see them in the same areas where the cattle are grazing, and birds are feeding on various kinds of seeds and fruits.
This area, as you can see, has been fenced off for cattle, but there were no cattle present at this time.
And one of the largest birds that you would see in the Pantanal was this.
It takes advantage of these grasslands. These are the greater rheas. These can stand 5 or 6 feet tall, weigh up to 70 pounds, and are closely related to ostriches. They came in flocks, and wherever there was an open field that gave them good feeding.
Yeah, we see a group of them. Woodpeckers are common in the northern hemisphere, and they have a whole array of woodpeckers that are in the Pantanal.
This is not a woodpecker. This is the thin-billed wood creeper, size of a downy woodpecker or maybe a little bit larger, but it behaves the same way, going up and down trees, pecking at it. It was what I thought was the first woodpecker I found there.
But notice that the tail is used for balance, just like the woodpeckers.
If you ignore the yellow color on this bird, you'd say this looks just like the flicker we have here at home in terms of its shape and the way it's perching. This is a different species of flicker that was present in the Pantanal. We saw a couple of them.
And here, these are true woodpeckers.
As is the flicker.
Beautiful, beautiful bird. Feasting on a palm tree.
But the best woodpecker we found, which was in a dead palm tree next to the river on one of the eco lodges, was the crimson crested woodpecker. This looked like it was the same size as the pileated woodpecker. Probably was a little bit smaller. There was a cavity in the palm tree up near the top, and for the 3 days we were in the Eco Lodge, periodically we'd see this one uh, going into or next to the cavity in the palm tree.
There are termite mounds all over, and it's a nice roosting place for burrowing owls. We saw them on a couple of occasions. These two were taking a rest, looking around for something to
This
eat.
is a tiny bird, probably about robin size, and actually burrowing owls are found throughout the Americas. There were other species of owls present as well. The only other one we saw was the great horned owl, uh, but that was at a distance and did not really get a good look at it. The great horned owl, is, as many of you know, is present throughout the United
And we hear them
States,
at Newbridge.
and we've heard them here at Newbridge.
This bird is interesting in many respects. It looks like an extension on a tree trunk. It's called a potu. We've seen them in Costa Rica, and it's quite a find because you really wouldn't see it unless the guide knows exactly where and how to find them. It's
It's
a
a
nocturnal bird.
completely nocturnal. It just sleeps on a branch during the daytime. If you look closely, and I think you can see, has its eyes shut. We were watching it for a while. Um, not a hint of movement. We went out for night rides on a couple of occasions. We'd go out in our safari vehicle before dinner. It was winter down there, such as it is, and didn't get dark, got dark around 6 o'clock, and it cooled off at night.
The temperatures would go into the 50s at night and go into the 80s during the daytime with very little humidity, surprisingly.
The bus drivers would provide, the safari drivers would provide gear to keep the women warm. I was not allowed to show the better picture here, which would be someone you know. But this is one of the people on our bus, on our safari vehicle.
And here's the
And find
potu at night. Okay, and you can see his eyes are open.
no longer perched on a branch where it's camouflage, doesn't need to worry about camouflage. The eye is strikingly large for a bird this size. We saw other birds at night as well, but during the daytime we saw a whole range of smaller birds, only a few of which we were able to photograph. There were two species which have the name cardinal. They're not related to the cardinal we have here.
Probably named because Brazil was a Catholic country and the cardinals would have had red attire.
This is the crested cardinal, and this is the yellow-billed cardinal. That was perched on one of the boardwalks right next to the Eco Lodge.
This particular bird is interesting because not the bird itself, but because of the kind of nest that it builds. It's called an oven bird familiarly, and you can see the nest that it builds. It's like a kiln, an oven. Now,
Let's
the
move on from birds for a moment now, and we'll move on to reptiles and amphibians.
any body of water that you would see in the Pantanal, you have to assume that there are caiman enjoying it as well. And we would walk on a boardwalk or on a road or whatever, and we'd see them lined up on the edge of the water, sunning themselves.
The caiman are, to my eye, very similar to alligators. They're Florida cousins. Alligators are larger. Alligators can go 10 to 15 feet in length. A full-grown caiman probably is in the 6 to 8 foot range. And but same appearance, same behaviors. As the water dried up and we were going into the dry season, they would line up along the edges of water, uh, where you often sunning themselves to stay warm.
And they would also you'd see them with their mouths open with this inviting grin, again to cool off, to regulate their body temperature.
This was at the Eco Lodge. I almost tripped on this fellow. I was chasing birds, but he was not interested in me, and I used it as a photographic moment.
But then we came in a waterfall fishing. This is a beautiful spot, and there they were.
Just sitting there with their mouths open, hoping for a fish or some other creature to fall in.
As we got off the launch on one occasion, we walked back up to our lodge, and there on the ground was a an anaconda.
A yellow anaconda. There are actually a couple of species there.
And there's Michael getting in position to photograph it.
This was a smallish one. It was only about 7 or 8 feet long. Um, they can grow up to 15 feet in length. Females are larger than the males. But this one was heading out from wherever it had been back toward the water.
It's like it had something to eat there.
Benita thinks it had something to eat. I'm not sure. I wasn't going to go really examine it too closely. Like all snakes, these have a forked tongue, and this was a close-up view of the head of that yellow anaconda
There were lizards, the
of
green lizards,
multiple species.
just like the ones you would see in Florida that had been brought up as pets. We'd see them all over the place.
This is the green iguana. This one was about 3 feet long. In Florida, we've seen some that go up to 6 feet. They turn brown as they get older. Same species. They've gotten into Florida as pets that have been released. There were several other species as well.
And then this little guy was on a board, on a fence or whatever,
And
and
it was on the windowsill
the
next to the
window.
dining hall.
And look at that pedicure. Those blue toes, blue feet.
We heard frogs at night all the time, but we were not able to go out in the water to look for them. Would have been very interesting if we could have. Let's move on to mammals. Here are a couple of two-legged mammals that you may know, sitting on top of a model statue, if you will, outside the Eagle Lodge. We'll get back to that species of jaguar in a few minutes.
The first one that I had been really interested in seeing was the capybara. This is a guinea pig on steroids. A guinea pig weighs, I don't know, 2, 3 pounds, maybe, if that. This critter weighs 200 pounds, and it looks just to me, like a guinea pig. It's the largest of the rodents, and you can see its size next to a duck.
This is the black-bellied whistling duck, which was native down there and actually is now present in the southern United States as well. That's actually one of the larger ducks, a little larger than a mammal. And again, it is just dwarfed. The guinea pig, the capybara, is totally vegetarian, eats the plants growing in the water, eats grass, whatever.
And we would see them in large groupings on all over the place. We saw them with babies. They're really cute. And we told our son he can't have one. But look at that. They were everywhere. We'd see them particularly in the morning as they were out grazing.
Capybara is eaten in Venezuela. It's considered a bit of a luxury or
Yeah,
a dietary staple. We did not eat any capybara. This is a cattle tyrant. Many of you have either been to Africa or have seen pictures of so-called ox peckers, which perch on the back of cattle there and eat the bugs out of the fur. The cattle tyrant behaves similarly, except it's not eating bugs off the back of the capybara. What it was doing was hopping down. The capybara is eating the grass, in the process stirring up flies and other insects, and the cattle tyrant would drop down, grab a bug, eat it, fly back up, and wait for the next bug to be uprooted by the capybara.
But interestingly, too, is to look at the fur on the capybara. It's a thick hide fur. And then we saw this being kicked up in the air. And our guide, we stopped, we went to look, And this is the evidence how you find armadillos. They do not they're not commonly seen. They're very secretive. They're underground.
We
They
only saw
burrow.
them on this one occasion. There are several species of armadillo in the Pantanal region of South America. There is one in the nine-banded armadillo that's present in Florida and Texas, Louisiana, along the southern border. Different species, but similar in appearance. These are not largely nocturnal. Uh, and they burrow into the ground. So your chances of seeing them in the daytime are very limited, which is why I guess we were lucky when we found these burrowing or digging a burrow, enabled us to, our guide to find these
And get
for
a
us.
good look at them. Yeah. And this is the animal that lured me to the Pantanal, the giant anteater. It is enormous. We saw it. We said that we saw them singularly walking through this grassy brush.
These are about 7 feet long. You say 7 feet long, recognize that of those 7 feet, probably
Half's the
3 feet
tail.
of that is tail, and another foot or maybe foot and a half.
It's a snout. It looks like a Dr. Seuss animal. If you look at it carefully, they're fairly solitary. And we literally were tramping through this field, keeping a reasonable distance,
When
trying to
we
get close enough to get a
when
good
we
look at it.
saw one, we went under a fence and into a field, and were led across by our guides to try and get closer, and obviously did get fairly close.
And here's a face-on view. You get a better sense of that snout, which
It's,
is
you
absolutely
can see the
amazing.
eye and ear near each other, and then the snout just goes and goes and goes.
They eat ants, but they will also eat termites.
Although 90% of the
Is
diet
ants.
is are ants.
We don't have pictures of it, but we did see astonishing ant colonies, really significant ones where the tracks go way through the woods and into big mounds.
I've seen numbers that they can eat 10 or 20,000 ants per day. Who counted them? I don't know. Though I think of monkeys as being jungle animals, uh, there are monkeys present in the trees there. We showed you earlier pictures of the black marmosets next to the place where we had lunch on the first day. On several occasions, we found this species, the black and gold howler monkey. These are known for their, and so named for the noise that they make, the howling, which early in the morning we were never, then none of them were near our eco lodge, and we saw these just from a distance.
But notice the two colors. The females are the gold ones, and the dark one, the black ones, are the males.
We also saw capuchin monkeys. These are smaller, still decent sized. These would be jumping, running along within the trees. They eat leaves and small twigs. If you look closely, you can see this one chewing on a small stick. You can see his teeth also.
Then we saw on the rivers giant otters. Now
This is
otters,
another one of the must-be-seen species of the Pantanal.
and if you've seen otters in the United States, you can see them at the Trailside Museum in Milton. We've seen them on the West Coast. We've seen otters in other places. These otters can weigh up to 70 pounds. Imagine
And
a
they
70-pound otter.
run about 6 feet or a little bit more long.
And they would see them in groupings along the river, generally around the edge of the river where they'd be fishing.
They'd be swimming in a group of three or four, just running alongside the river.
Stretching, yawning, looking for something to eat.
Good teeth.
And here you see it eating a fish by the side of the river. They catch something, then they stop and chow down.
Stop to eat. And then they rip it apart. They use those teeth. They hold on with their hands.
Looks more like a little hippopotamus to me,
No.
but it isn't. It's an otter. And now,
For our
interestingly,
last species of the day,
we really were interested in seeing this creature feature. And we looked and we'd look everywhere we'd go, we'd be looking for
when we
jaguars.
were riding in the safari vehicle, of course, we weren't near the water. We were going through the forest. How you would see a jaguar in in the trees, I don't know. Um, Only on the last day, and there it is.
It's like a Where's Waldo. The guides talk to each other by phone, however they communicate. So I think they had a heads up that there was a jaguar in this brush. And we sat there and waited and identified the jaguar. And then she walked out with a cub. The jaguars are extraordinary animals. They are uh, part of a huge conservation effort. They're the largest cat in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, weighing up to 200 pounds, generally solitary except when you find them with a cub. Notice also in this photo of the mother walking off with her cub that the mother has a collar on. Um,
I will tell you more about that in a minute. But there's a huge effort to preserve them and understand them. Okay.
More often, we found them near banks of rivers. Unlike almost any other cat, with the possible exception of the small area of India where you have tigers, cats do not like water and are not aquatic. But as we were cruising up and down the river at the second eco lodge, gave us multiple opportunities to see these pussy cats.
And there they are. They sit on this one was sitting on the bank of an outcropping on the bank of the river, just sitting there, taking a look. And they have behaviors, if you've had a house cat, the behaviors are very similar to a domestic cat.
Roll around, put their feet in the air,
Scratch my tummy,
shut their eyes, relax.
you know, yawn. We saw them, and the thing about them that was so interesting, we watched them swimming in the river. This cat swam across, and the cub was right behind her.
We had watched her on the bank of the shore with her cub, and then suddenly she decided to
She
cross. You can
wanted to
see there's
cross.
another boat also watching. Uh, the cat, the jaguar, was totally oblivious to people. Our favorite sighting was of this one, which was perched on a branch overlooking the water. We watched this for about 20 minutes. She sat there, shut her eyes, hung her
Opened her
feet over
eyes,
the edge.
flicked her tail, yawned.
We went away after a while and then came back because nothing was happening. And then she finally got up and started looking down at the water a little more intently, much more intently, in fact.
And then did a
In the
big
space of
leap.
about 1 second, and I can time that from luckily I was in burst mode on my camera, and there she is going in. She actually came up empty-handed, or empty-pawed, as the saying goes. She reappeared on the branch a couple minutes later with nothing in her mouth, so we assume she didn't catch anything.
So jaguars and much of this area is endangered. It's endangered from the infringement of habitat more than anything else. And the Brazilian government is doing a great deal to protect all the animals of the Pantanal. And they do it under the heading of the Jaguar Project. ONCA is the Portuguese name for jaguar. So Ancafari is their project. And what they do is they have a wonderful uh, research center. They have people who go out and identify, tag the jaguars. They have a couple hundred that actually have collars now. They put in motion detector cameras in various sites so they can understand and see how the animals live. They have outreach to schools and information that they provide to the community to help protect this, not just the jaguar, but this entire extraordinary environment. It's a fabulous place, unbeknown to many, even Brazilians. When we told people we were going to the Pantanal, they gave us a look. What in the world is that? And we got an opportunity to see what it was all about.
So
So,
with that, we'll close and point out only that we didn't show you everything we saw. There was a lot more species of mammals, insects. Sorry, I left those out today. Turtles, you name it. Glad to answer any questions that you have.
along with that.